Okay, well, it looks like the participation entry door has slowed down. It's 10:09, so we're going to get started. This meeting is being recorded, and this meeting is being recorded so that we can then post this on our website no later than Monday, so that if you all want to go back and take a look at it or even look at the presentation again, you're more than welcome to, and you can share it with anybody who may not have been able to. I do want to also mention that I will be providing a recap for the commission. I'll be providing a recap to the commission on Tuesday's commission meeting at 7 p.m. As well. So if you'd like to also make additional comments there, you are more than welcome to join us, and we hope we see you all with us there. So let's get started. So what are we going to be talking about today? Today we're going to be talking about how the village is preparing for a new RFP, which is called the Request for Proposal. What that is essentially a document where various vendors and companies will provide their bids or proposals to the village so that we can evaluate them and see what would be best for the village. The overall theme and everything that I've been looking at through this process is the consistent quality of service for the community. And what that means, it's going to be looking for weekly yard waste collection, bulk waste collection, weekly recycling, and garbage collection twice a week. Now, as we go in through that, the overall topics that we'll kind of talk about today, we'll discuss some common definitions so that we can make sure we are all kind of talking about the same things. We'll also be talking about what we pay currently for the services that we receive. What are those services? What were the requested services in the last bids that the village went out to not too long ago? An apple to oranges rate comparisons, and I'll kind of explain what that means a little bit later. The analysis that we did in-house, as well as the different types of services that are available to the community. What are the next steps for in this process? And then we will end with comments and questions. Now, I would like to request, as we get to the comments and questions, we really focus on how we can move this forward positively. The issues that the village has faced in the past is not something that we'll be addressing here. We're looking on how we're going to be moving forward. So let's get into it. Some common definitions. Now, this is a lot of information that you see on your screen, and I'm not going to read it word by word, but I wanted to kind of leave it in there so that if you do go back to it, you can get into a little bit more detailed. Essentially, there's two types of services. There's a manual collection and an automated collection. The manual collection is, as you see in your top left picture, where you have a crew of people working, picking up the bins that you all have with your bags and the various trash and throwing it into the back of the car or the truck. That's called the rear loader. That type of truck is called a rear loader, which is why you see the manual and the rear loader bullet points kind of together. There's a modern service or an automated type of collection. This is where essentially you have a truck. Normally it has one individual inside a cabin, and he controls the entire truck from that cabin. And everything is loaded from the side of the truck. So on the bottom right, you'll see a picture where you have an automated arm that kind of comes in, picks up a cart, dumps it into the truck. Curbside collection is normally referred to because that's where, like in the bottom right picture, the bins are located. In most communities, there's sidewalks and things like that near the edge of the roadway, so they put it on the curb. For us here at Biscayne Park, it's essentially the edge of the pavement. So that is where we would be looking at what's called curbside collection. Garbage, I believe for the most part, we call it trash, but garbage, and these definitions were collected mainly from the North American Association for Solid Waste companies. So I'm trying to find that common ground between what we call it and what the industry calls these things. So garbage, regular trash that you discard in your home, You have it in those black bags or the white kitchen bags. Regularly, yard waste or green waste is your grass clippings, the weeds, the yard trimming, the branches, the palm fronds, all that type of organic material that you do throughout your property. And then you have the bulk waste and the white goods. Essentially, those are those oversized household items, or even yard waste it could be. So an example of some of the bulk would be some furniture, the mattress, when you're doing some do-it-yourself home improvements, those type of things, children's play equipment, TVs, etc., things like that. And white goods would be your larger, the washer, the dryer, the refrigerators, and things of those where it's just way too heavy to pick up just one at a time. So let's start talking about where can we see what we pay for on our for solid waste. Now, the great thing that Biscayne Park has done over the years is they have it as part of the property taxes. So it makes it very transparent and easy to see. Some other municipalities will put it as part of their utility bills with either water or other type of services that they may have. So it could be a little trickier to find. But for us, if you go to the Miami-Dade Property Appraiser, their website, at the very top, you'll see a property search button. Once you click in there, I put it in as an example just to using the Village Hall here. You'll see this picture that you have here on the right. Now, on the very bottom, you see that little green circle that kind of pops up now. You'll see something called the trim notice. Once you click on that, and there's this wealth of information for each property, but once you click on the trim notice, on the bottom left, you'll see this screen pop up, and it will essentially ask you what year do you want to see that notice. So when you pick on 2020, essentially what you will get is on the top left, you'll see this picture here. Now, this is a random home throughout the village, and you'll see there's a lot of information on there. I left a little bit on the left column of what's on there. It is the Miami-Dade County taxes, and they have the fire, the library, the county-wide tax, and you have the public schools. Then you have the municipal, which is Biscayne Park, and then you'll have the water management and the independent taxing authorities like FIND and other voter approved bonds and things like that are usually countywide. So in essence, Biscayne Park only receives a third of all of the taxes you essentially pay. But at the very bottom where I circled green here, you'll see this is where we end up showing what the cost for solid waste is. And you'll see I made the picture on the bottom now. What's good for us is that no matter what the value of the home is, everybody pays the same per unit. So a single family home, whether it's $300,000 being evaluated by the property manager or it's $10 million, will still pay the same for the solid waste that they receive. Now, a single family home is 1 unit, duplexes are 2, triplexes are 3, and so forth and so forth. So on the very bottom, you'll see the non-ad valorem assessment. So this is not included in the taxes that you pay for Biscayne Park. This is completely separate, and it's essentially a flat fee. So you'll see solid waste. You'll see that for this home, it's 1 unit, and you'll see the rate of right now what the village is paying in 2020. The rate was $481.51. So the assessment is $481.51. If it's 2 or 3, then that would go up proportionately. So what do we receive for that $481.51 that we've been paying? So the current contract right now for garbage or trash pickup, it's picked up twice a week on Tuesdays and Fridays. And the method of collection is manual. So just like in that picture on the top left that we saw earlier, I put it back on there. You have a crew where they pick it up by hand and they throw it in the back of the truck. The container, there's not a standard container for the village at the moment. Right now it is, you cannot have something that exceeds 40 gallons for trash. And the purpose because of that is because it can get too heavy to pick up. And so it becomes limited in what the personnel can pick up and put into the back of the truck. The second type of collection is yard waste, and that's usually once a week on Monday. And this is all per the contract that I read. So the method of collection is typically manual for piles of 2 cubic yards or smaller. Now, I don't know about you. For me, what's a cubic yard? I always have that trouble of trying to visualize it. So I was able to find the picture to kind of simplify this a little bit. A cubic yard is essentially the size of your oven in your kitchen. And when we put 2, it is a refrigerator. And I think that really helps us to understand what kind of size. It doesn't have to be just vertically. It can be horizontally as well. As long as you're keeping within that 2 cubic yards, it should be picked up manually. Above that, you start getting the truck that has like a claw that kind of comes in and helps pick up all the material. Now, moving on, we have the bulk and the white goods, which typically would be once a week. And that would be on Monday, again, with the yard waste. So yard waste can go with bulk regularly, or if you're cutting your grass and you put it all in a bag, or you're raking the leaves that fall from the various type of tree species that we have. If you put those in a bag and you want to put it with the garbage, that is fine as well. Yard waste typically just gets burned up with the garbage normally. So it's not just a special, like recycling would be something special that they take to a different location. So you can put it with the garbage, you can put it with the bulk. It all goes kind of to the same place. Recycling is done once a week on Fridays, and the method again is a manual collection. There are a lot of different containers throughout the village. The village does provide carts that are up to 65 gallons, and we see a lot of our residents are using this type of cart, which is a good thing. Now, part of the contract is also something called a franchise fee, and it's at 11%. And the contract was for 5 years, and they have extensions, and we're kind of eating through those extensions now. So, but just to go back real quick, what is a franchise fee? Because I failed to add that in part of the definitions as well. Essentially, the franchise fees. Garbage truck have the highest impact on the roads and the maintenance of the roads and things like that. So traditionally, municipalities, they charge those vendors who are collecting on a weekly basis, and in this case, we would have garbage trucks 3 times a week, essentially, coming into the village, and they charge a franchise fee to help offset the cost of maintaining the roadways and things like that. Various cities have different levels, and it kind of just goes in. The way it's normally collected is the vendor will discount that percentage from the overall bill that ends up being sent to the village. So that's where we are. That's where we've been. We took a step. The village took a step to see if we go back out to the market, and they created a new RFP. And there's a lot of good things in there that was done, but there's some things that kind of made it difficult to really have a fair comparison among those bidders, those companies that wanted to work here in the village. But let's just kind of go over some of those services that were requested. So for garbage or the trash, it remained twice a week. The method of the collection kind of changed a little bit. It was now curbside, or that edge of payment, like you see in the picture on the top right, which means it's more of an automated system. Now, this allows for a more consistent type of pickup. With automated services, what's different from manual is with manual labor, people get sick, people get tired. It becomes very hot in the summers here in South Florida. When it rains a lot, it also becomes very dangerous for them to be working, especially when some of these things can be heavy. So what this type of truck and with this type of automation, it starts taking those variables out, so you have a more reliable service moving forward. And so the side yard or the back side, which a smaller group of residents still use, would still be available, but for medical exemptions or for those who are unable to move those type of carts. So a program would be developed. Say, you know, you're moving the cart every week for delivery, but for some reason, whether you were doing gardening or you got hurt on your job, you can't for the next month or the next 2 months, you can't do it. And obviously there you have that medical exemption. So you would reach out to the village or to the vendor, we would sign you up. And so essentially what would happen is, for those few properties that need that backyard service, essentially the driver would get out of his truck, bring the cart to the truck, dump it, and then kind of put it back. But because it's much fewer residents, we're able to maintain a certain level of frequency and service throughout. And it also makes, using this type of automated system also makes it not only more reliable and frequent, but it makes it a lot easier for the company and faster for them to kind of get through the day, so that there aren't as many missed pickups as we've been seeing. Now, yard waste would continue on a weekly basis. It also called for a Saturday quarterly pickup, and the method for the collection was a manual pickup for the 2 cubic yards or smaller, and then anything above 2 cubic yards would be an automated pickup. And automated pickup, again, is that claw type of truck. It's got almost like a mini crane that would come in and pick everything up and then kind of dump it into the back of the truck. They can use that for bulk as well. Recycling remained once a week, just as it is. It opened it to be manual or automated, whatever the vendor wanted. And it had very different containers, again, no bigger than 65 cards. So that didn't really change. What was added to the recycling was a rewards program to incentivize more participation. White goods would change a little bit, where if you had the ovens and your refrigerators and these large, you'd have to call ahead and give between a 24 to 72 hour notification, in which then the vendor will tell you, okay, we'll be here on a certain date to pick everything up. And then bulk pickup, again, would be on the first day of the garbage pickup for the week. So that's still a weekly occurrence. The franchise fee remains the same, the length of contract remained the same, and there were various different services and pricing, which I'll touch upon shortly within the pricing. And what that gave us was essentially three companies that said, okay, I'm interested in doing this work, and here's the pricing. Now you'll see, two different little asterisks within the ranges that they were doing. The first asterisk is, part of the pricing, there was a component that there are some required fees that they would still have to pay when they go to dispose of all the garbage and the yard waste and the recycling. They were saying it would be a pass-through to the customer. One way or another, we as a community would be paying for it. The question is how it's shown on paper, either all-inclusive with everything, or like it was being shown here as a pass-through. So you would have your base rate, and then you will have an additional fee on top of that, depending on what those fees were. So that would be kind of delineated. Now, the second asterisk, you'll see the first proposal came in at a very low cost, even lower than what we had, what we're currently paying. Now, I put an asterisk because their proposal wasn't quite clear as to, was the franchise fee included in that pricing or not. And I'm sure it would have been worked out if they would have continued moving forward. But if you add that franchise fee, that additional 11%, proposal 1 and proposal 2 are almost identical. So just to give you an idea of where these market rates we were looking at and what that kind of looked like for us. Now, the apple to oranges rate comparisons, and I use the pun because it's, although everybody throughout the community receives, throughout the county and different municipalities, they receive essentially the same type of service, because each community is unique within itself and how those components interact with them, then it's not an easy way to compare for a single family home what everybody kind of pays, because the contracts aren't structured that way. And so as an example, Bay Harbor Islands, not too far from us, about the same size municipality wise, population wise. Now, the difference here is you'll see that for a single family home, they're paying $207. That's an amazing deal. We'll take that every day and twice on Sundays, right? The problem as it relates that we wouldn't be able to take advantage of that contract. You know, we can call them up and say, hey, we want to use the contract. Bay Harbor Islands would be great. Here you go. The contractor will say, no, 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 simply because the majority of homes in Bay Harbor Islands are condos and large multifamily buildings, right? And so they have a different price than the 207 per year. They also have a lot of commercial business, and that's split up into two. So you have your retail and then you have your restaurants. So multifamily and retail type businesses actually pay about $130 a month. And their restaurants, they pay up to $250 a month. So the way that the contractor did their pricing is they loaded up on the multifamily and commercial business on the rates on a monthly basis, so that they can really make the residential at a lower rate, which is normally commercial business supplements the residential pickup. Biscayne Park, in that sense, is in a bit of a disadvantage because we don't really have commercial property here within the village to help kind of supplement that type of rate comparison. So, but I did the very best that I could to try to find other municipalities that are similar as best as I could. Virginia Gardens, I thought, was very similar to Biscayne Park, mainly residential. They have Waste Management, which is a very highly regarded company as well. When I did a little bit more digging and I talked to them and I talked to Waste Management, turns out Waste Management bought a company that was very small, and they bought it for many different reasons, but it was very small. And so they decided they were going to honor the contracts that they had. And at the time, that small company was charging Virginia Gardens $241 a year for their residential costs. Waste Management cannot wait for that contract to end because they will never, and I tried, I go, can I still use their contract? And it was like, no. So that they can bring those rates back up to what the market, which for the most part, the market is bearing in the mid 4s to 5s for that. Now, some of the things that did not work in the RFP that we went, and I'm going to go back. Some of the things that did not work in this RFP were there was a lot of different areas where the vendors were starting to try to take advantage to lower the cost, but overcharge in other areas, almost like they're doing in that commercial versus residential, right? And so it made it very difficult to have an equal comparison on the same type of services. And so for that reason, and probably for some others, it was decided not to use it. One of those being a rewards program to incentivize more participation. These companies, they're not in that type of marketing type of business, right? They're trying to take a square peg to fit in a round hole because that's what we're asking for. And they'll make something work, but it's not their forte. So that is something that the village, if we wanted to do some type of incentive program, I'm sure that we can handle. That is not part of their actual contract that might start affecting the rates. Some of the other things were different type of services like hazard material, which is normally your chemicals, your cleaners, your paint supplies, and things like that, that you should not be putting with the regular trash or garbage or bulk pickup. That's usually taken somewhere else to be disposed of. And so they were throwing out different type of services from weekly to on call to monthly to once a quarter. And because it was kind of all over the place, that's where you start seeing the different ranges. And then on the pricing, when we all go to Costco, we always think, you know, if I buy in bulk, the individual unit would actually be cheaper than if I buy the same thing in Publix, for example, because you're buying more of it. So individually, it becomes cheaper. Now, with that, we were thinking, well, that might be working with the length of the contract. Instead of just saying you're guaranteed 5 years, what if we give you 7 or 10 years? What some of these proposals actually did is, instead of giving a lower rate, that rate started going up. So I think there was some confusion between what the village was looking for and what the companies were giving. And I think some of that might be that there was no pre-bid meeting, usually a meeting that you have with the industry prior, while the they're looking at all the documents so that they can ask you questions and they can get that better temperature. And then they can go back and ask questions afterwards in writing. So there could have been some of that confusion there. So we talked about the apples to oranges. We talked about the past. Now, you'll notice, and I'm sorry, I'll go back. One company here, one community here is not outsourced, and I put this one in purpose. It's Miami Shores, because there are neighbors to the south, right? And for the most part, it's a positive reception of what they do in-house. Now, their residents pay $900 a year, and that's a well-established department. And so the trucks, the equipment, the laborers, the process, the carts that everybody uses, all of that, they have worked all those things out to the level of service that they have now over many, many years and decades. And so now we look at, wow, it's a great service and it's a well-oiled machine. There was a lot of hiccups along the way, but just to give at least that comparison. So one of the things in discussion when I first came on board was, Mario, take a look at, there's a request to take a look at what in-house services, bringing that back into the village, what it could be like. So we took a look, and former Commissioner William Tudor started that process, and he was kind enough to share that with me. And so I took that, and then I started doing a bunch more research and verification and taking a look. In my assessment, the bare minimum to start, you would need at least 6 employees for the department. And we looked at what their salaries would cost, what is the contract language between the village and the union that currently oversees the Public Works Department, what are the costs, their benefits, their health insurance, their retirement, all of those additional costs that you normally do not pay with outsourced services. And we looked at what other cities were paying those type of employees. And so we made a best guess as to what would we end up paying a driver. And so we added those salaries and those costs. And then we started looking at other operational expenses. What is the disposal, which is essentially the landfill, where you end up dropping everything out. You pay that per the tonnage. You also look at the transfer fee, or it's called the tipping fee in some cases, which is the fee that you pay just to have access to that landfill. What we pay on recycling. What will it cost to lease 3 new trucks? Because purchasing, they're very, very expensive. So leasing those type of trucks and the size of truck that we would be looking at, you would essentially need about 3 to be able to operate, 2 for garbage and then 1 for the bulk and the yard waste, right? And then insurance and liability, repair, because you will always have some type of maintenance, whether you lease it or not, what the cost of fuel is, and then the various different other fees that go into play. And we base some of that off some of the prior budget that was used in years that it was in-house. We looked at some of what the other cities looked and what their current budgets call for and their line items. So we started making the best assessment we can. Now, even with all that, there are certain things that are not accounted for within these figures. One is, where do we park these trucks? If we park it in the Public Works, our employees were telling me stories of when we did have, and many of the residents, the smell, they could not, when you get a good wind, the smell coming from these trucks, because it's decomposing material, whether it's old food and things like that, would start spreading throughout the surrounding homes, and that was a problem. If we're going to park them outside of the village, well, then there's an additional cost for that. And what would that cost be? There's various different resources that we would need. Right now, the way it should be working is, if there's a missed pickup, or if there's something that they didn't do properly, you call the contractor and they're supposed to take care of that. If it's in-house, then we're moving employees away from their daily jobs to help take care of that complaint and being able to move forward and respond to those concerns. And what happens when our employees get sick, or they take a vacation or any of those things, there will be some type of need for temporary day laborers. And in all the cities that we looked in, that ranged drastically depending on each city. I've seen some where they spend over $150,000 on that. And again, that's not included in these type of budgets. So we did the very best we could to kind of able to show what it is with the way that the salaries and the benefits and everything works. Those will continue to increase between a 2 to 4% increase on a year-to-year basis. So these numbers wouldn't be flat from year to year. If we keep it flat for the resident, the overall administration would continue to go up, but the revenue coming in would be different. And so we would have to make some type of adjustment from that, either from the general fund or something like that, or somewhere else, to be able to make it revenue neutral or net zero. And then some of the areas you see little green asterisks in some of these line items. I did the very best we could to verify these numbers without actually going and saying, yes, we're going to start moving in that process. So the leasing, we got an estimated, and I have a whole spreadsheet. So if you want to get into the geeky side and look at all these numbers, I would be happy to share it. Just shoot me an email. But it's about $1,800 a month per vehicle. That was the best estimate that we can find. It might be a little bit more, it might be a little bit less, but those were the best estimates. Insurance, we took an estimate. Again, we verified with other cities and what their budgets call for. Some cities had insurance going up to $35,000, and some had it lower. It kind of depends on how they're splitting it up within their budget, and that's all the personal preference of the administration for those cities and their elected bodies. And so it's not as simple as, well, here's the one number. Again, apples to oranges kind of comparison that we have there. So these numbers are the best guess, but they could be higher. And they could be right on the money, or they could be a little bit lower. But I think this is overall a good analysis of what we kind of look like, of what it would cost, at least to start. And again, as the years continue, the total administration budget would continue to rise. So we're getting into a little bit of like, okay, well, we understand what are the types of services that Biscayne Park in this new RFP that you're putting together, what can we really look for? Now there's the automated system, and then there's the manual system. And so depending on what we're looking for, there's different opportunities to kind of take advantage of. Now, in this chart, I added Miami-Dade County because that's always a option if a contractor that cities have, when contractors, they're not getting the bids that they need, or the pricing is just too outrageous, or the contractor decided, that's it, I'm done, I'm just gonna walk away, or they go bankrupt and they leave us high and dry. The county is always available, and therefore first thought is service, it's not on price. So I put it in here so that you can see the similarities in service. Now, automated, the carts, which you have a comparison right now to the left, is at the edge of the pavement. You normally cannot have side yard service, so I marked it off with an X. Although again, you would have the driver for a few properties go in, bring it out, and then do it. Now, if the idea is that we want to maintain the high quantity of homes with side yard, then it'd have to be a manual process. With the cart size on the manual side, we're limited to those smaller carts or bins, I'm sorry, that you see. So in the picture to your left, you'll see that you have a 13 and a 32 gallon for your reference, which is pretty common of what you all kind of hold your trash and your garbage in. If you go into more the automated system, because it's an hydraulic arm and it's a machinery, it can lift a lot more. And so you have different options to go from 48 all the way up to 95. Now, what's a side benefit of this is sometimes we have, whether we had family over or we just stayed at home, and we have more garbage, especially now this past year with COVID, there's been a lot more trash and garbage generation because we're home a lot more. And so the 32 or the 40 gallon bins that we have throughout the village, they don't hold all of those garbage bags. So they're left out on the side, which right now, because it's a manual service, is not an issue, but sometimes it's unsightly. So by having these carts with a larger capacity, more fit in, and it becomes a little bit easier to maintain. So with an automated system, you can go up to a 90, 95, 96 gallons. Manual is 40. Overflow bags, like I just mentioned, in an automated system, you normally don't leave them just on the side of the bins because you don't have that crew coming behind to pick it up like you do in the manual side. The type of trucks that are used, somewhat important, again, just for educational purposes, side loader versus rear loader. Automated, you have that side loader because you have that arm that grabs the cart and kind of just dumps it onto the side, where when you have a bunch of guys grabbing your bins and throwing it, they're usually doing it to the rear. And then you have on a fully automated system, the yard pickup would be with that with the claw that kind of comes in. Usually, again, you only have one worker with the truck. On the manual, you have the opportunity to have a smaller pickup to be picked up. And then if there's too much or it's too heavy, then they would come back with a claw type of machine to kind of pick it up. And then for recycling, it would continue whether it's automated or manual once a week. The difference is where you're placing those carts, which we already talked about a little bit further up. So what are some of the benefits that we have with a automated system? And I wanted to make sure that we talked about that a little bit. It's more efficient. You're reducing the amount of times that a worker could get injured. And when I was in college, some of the ways that I made was I worked for Federal Express in their warehouse, and they had a limit of what you could ship on the regular trucks. And I can't tell you how many times I went to pick up a computer monitor, and that box weighed 200 pounds, not the 25 to 50. And they didn't label it properly. So, there was a couple times where I got hurt. So an automated system helps reduce those type of injuries, slip and falls if it's raining, the grass is wet while they're walking on the property, all of these things, it helps reduce. It makes it more frequent. And what does that mean? Like, how does an automated system have a more frequent pickup? Well, you no longer have the weather as a factor, right? If it's 90 degrees out, that's fine, because the cabin where the driver has AC, so they're just using the machine to pick up. Where, when it starts getting into 90 or in the middle of the summer, the guys who are walking behind, they get tired, they got to stop, they got to slow down. They might say, we can't go anymore. And all of these companies normally have unions. So after a certain threshold, they get back into the truck and they take off. And if they left half the route, well, they'll have to come back and do it another day, but it becomes too much. Or if it's raining, if it's too cold sometimes, all of these things come into a factor. So when you start eliminating the human factor from the pickup, you're able to have a more consistent quality of service moving forward, right? Now, normally industry-wide, when you have that, you tend to generate less service complaints, less you missed my pickup, you missed my trash today. And so that allows, but again, the downside is when you have those overflow and those extra bags, you can't just leave it around the ground, but you try to compensate for that with the larger carts. So there's some of that information there. And I promise we're coming towards the end and I want to hear from you all. So what are some of the next steps? What are we looking for? Again, we're looking for moving forward with an RFP that's going to have weekly yard pickup, yard waste pickup, bulk pickup, twice garbage, and recycling. We're probably looking at, and I want to hear from you because I think we can modernize some of it without and improving the quality of service and the consistency of the service so it's consistent, right? Without jeopardizing how much and the frequency of the services that we want. So the next step on next Tuesday, February 2nd at 7 p.m., we're going to have the commission meeting. I'll be giving a quick recap of this meeting with a summary and the themes of a lot of your comments for the commission. We welcome you to join us there as well. There is public participation there, so you can restate your comments, or if you have an additional comment or an additional type of questions or anything like that, you can always come back to the commission meeting next Tuesday once you're able to digest a little bit more, because this is a lot of information being thrown at you. So thank you for being here. After that, what's going to happen, Mario? So I will hold what's called an industry forum. And essentially, it's just a meeting similar to what we're having now between village staff, more than likely myself, and maybe Caesar from Public Works. And we'll be talking to the various companies that do this type of service. We'll tell them overall, this is how many homes that we service. This is kind of what we're looking for. What would they like to see within this type of RFP that will make it attractive for them to bid on? And the reason why we ask those questions is because we want to have as much competition as possible. So it's always better to be looking at 7, 10, even 100 type of companies saying, I want to work for you, because there you start looking at and getting better pricing, as opposed to there's only one game in town and they kind of dictate whatever they want. So we want to try to make it where we still receive everything we want, but we take into account some of the things that they're looking for. So that will probably happen in February, a little bit later in February. From there, we would finalize and draft the documents to be made public for the companies to review and start assessing whether they want to make a bid or not. That would happen in March. We, at the same time, once that's made public, probably a week after, we hold a pre-bid meeting for the industry. So now they've had a chance to read through it. They know what we want. They might have some additional questions that we can answer, so that can better, they might point out, hey, this isn't consistent within the RFP. You might want to take a look at that, allow us to do that. There's other timelines built into that, but essentially we would then receive the actual bids in sometime in April. And we would have an evaluation committee take a look and be able to compare, hopefully apple to apples, between all the companies as to what's going to work best for the village and which company will give us the best service and the best prices. And then from there, we anticipate a recommendation to the commission in May for them to kind of take a look at, and they can award the contract. They can reject the contract. Or they can change gears if they want. If after they see everything and they see the award, they decide, you know what, thank you, we decided we're not going to go in this direction. We're going to explore something else or change gears, change path. They have that ability, but they'll have that recommendation in front of them in May. And that's important to state, because for the next part, I'd love to invite the commissions to say a few words. However, I do want to say, because this will be a subject that will come in front of the commission for a vote, commission, please express yourselves here, but at the same time, please remember that as it will be coming out to a vote, we don't want to get into any kind of gray area with sunshine laws and trying to influence prior to this being in front of you. So we'll take a couple minutes from any of the commissioners that wish to speak. And then from there, we'll go into the community. And if you all would like, please start raising your hands, and I'll try to get to everybody as best as possible. We'll try to limit the conversation to about 3 minutes. So we try to get through everybody. If once we've gotten through everybody, and I'm just trying to set up the timer here so that we can kind of keep track of that. Once everybody has spoken, if you want to talk again, you're more than welcome to, but we just want to try to be as fair as possible with everybody. So if we can limit and be kind of concise, and then if you want to come back, we'll get back to you. So I am here at Village Hall. I don't know if you can tell with the background, if you've seen this background, although the office is a little bit of a different color. So I am committed to being here to answer and listen to everybody, however long that takes. So I'm encouraged, I'm listening, and I know that the commission is listening as well. Just before we get to the commission, I already see some of them raising their hands. And to wrap it up, this, as I mentioned, is being recorded. It will be up on our website and on YouTube no later than Monday afternoon, hopefully sooner. And if you have any additional comments or questions that maybe you just didn't want to speak out on Zoom, you're more than welcome to email me at any point, and I can take a look and take that into account as well. So I am going to stop sharing so that it is a little bit easier to see everybody and see where all the hands are, okay? And commissioners, if you can maybe just take one or 2 minutes, and we'll start with the mayor and kind of work our way through that. Mayor O'Halpin, there you go.
Morning, everybody. I just want to thank Mario for such a great job. You really did a lot of work on that, and thank you very much. And let's hope it all works out well, but you did a heck of a good job. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. The next hand I see raised from our commission is from Commissioner Judy Hamelberg. Let's see, has to unmute.
Okay. Again, just to repeat what Ginny said, I know you've been putting a lot of work into it, Mario. I thank you very, very, very much for all your research. It's a difficult process. People here in our village get very emotional about their garbage pickup, as I'm sure you've seen and heard, and about our employees. And I think based on what we saw, I think we have to look at automation. Whichever way we go, I think we need to come into the new century where we're putting people's bodies and health at less risk.
Thank you, Commissioner. Let's reminder for the commission. I just want to make sure that we're protecting ourselves on a future vote. So just please be cautious with all the comments that we talk through, so that we're not trying to influence the other commissioners or make it appear that we are. Commissioner, is there anything else, or does another commissioner? Okay, I don't see. Okay, I see Commissioner Kennedy and Commissioner Samaria. I saw Kennedy raise his hand first, so I'll
defer to Dan. Let's let Dan go first. I'll go last if you want me to.
No, Commissioner Samaria.
First off, I want to thank the city manager for putting this on. As Commissioner Kennedy has said in the past, along with me and the rest of the commissioners, we want transparency. This presentation was fantastic. This is a good presentation. It has given us, to the residents, to see the transparency. A lot of the items that I want to talk about, I want to save my view on these items. I want to save, I agree with City Manager Mario. I want to save my comments as far as what I would like to see at a commission meeting. I think that'd be better to do that. But I just wanted to congratulate the city manager for putting this together. I definitely believe that we need to have another workshop at night for those that couldn't participate now. And I really want to hear from the residents, and I am happy to see that we have 57 participations. That's a lot. And so I think that hopefully in the future we have a lot more of these workshops, because it looks like that's what the residents want. So that's all I got to say. But thank you for your presentation. And I also like the idea that you meet with commissioners privately, which is good. And so anyway, I want to thank you for this.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Kennedy.
Thanks, Mario, and hi, everyone. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Yes, sir.
Okay. I want to say just a little bit about what I want to hear from the residents when you all start speaking. Many things help define who we are as a community. Our solid waste services are certainly among them. I would like to hear the elements that you all desire for solid waste, frequency of service, and how recycling is managed, how trucks impact our tree canopy, all that stuff. But more than that, I'm hoping to hear how you think our solid waste services define Biscayne Park as a community and what we aspire to be in the future. Aspirations define and guide us. Do you want Biscayne Park to be defined as a preferred community with high-level services? Or do you merely want us to save money and get the job done? Both perfectly legitimate viewpoints. Do you view Biscayne Parks perhaps somewhere in the middle? I have my own opinions as a resident and also as a commissioner with the responsibility to move us forward, but today is about hearing your opinions. I also want to hear what you're willing to pay to fund your aspirations for Biscayne Park solid waste. Are we already overpaying, or are you willing to pay more for your desired level of service? Right now, we each pay about $40 a month as an add-on to our tax bill. Is that already negatively impacting your life, or are you willing to pay more to get someone to deliver your desired level of service? And what's the ceiling on what you're willing to pay? Would you pay more just to get what's already promised to us now that some think isn't being delivered? Can you pay an extra $10, $20, $30 a month? If that's what premium service would cost and that's what you desire. I pulled those numbers out of my head. What's your sweet spot as we start weighing the cost and value moving forward? Mario will lead us to a solution in the coming months. That's his job, and he's clearly taking it very seriously. But Mario doesn't live in Biscayne Park. You and I are the residents in this equation, the investors in the village. Biscayne Park is our home and where we've all invested our personal money for our present quality of life and for our long-term futures. The commission will direct Mario to get what we want for the village, but first we must decide what that is. Today is an opportunity for you to help define this village. Then the commission's job is to refine that and make sure that Mario gets it accomplished for us. I'm all ears. I'm anxious to hear what you have to say. Thanks for attending and for sharing your opinions.
Thank you, Commissioner Kennedy. And last, but definitely not least, Commissioner Gonzalez, would you like to say a couple words? Or Vice Mayor?
Can you hear me? There's a plane flying overhead right now. Sorry. No, I just wanted to say, listen, same thing the mayor said, yeah, fantastic presentation. Obviously, you know, this is a hot topic in our community, and I'm glad to see so many residents getting involved, and we're just waiting to hear what everyone has to say. Thanks again.
Wonderful. Now, I'm just going to ask, we're going to go in no particular order, just what's kind of coming in through my Zoom here on the participation link. I would just ask that you please use the raising hand feature. You can do that on the bottom of your screen. That will help me kind of keep track of everyone. I know some are raising their hands visually, but we have about between 50, right now 56, but it kind of goes all the way up to 60 sometimes. So I want to make sure that I catch you all. So if you can raise your hands, I will go through those and then I'll do a visual check as well. So the very first person, again, in no particular order, except that Zoom just puts it this way. The first person that I have is a Viviana Martinez, and I've asked to unmute. Perfect. Hi, Ms. Martinez.
Hi, thank you so much. Thanks for the presentation. I have one question and more, I guess, with questions. With a curbside pickup, will we need new trash cans? Will they be provided, or what's the cost? And then how is the recycling being handled? Because one of the things that it's extremely upsetting is that we take the time to want to recycle and pay for recycling, but when we see it going into the same truck as the garbage, you know it's not being recycled. So those were my 2 points that I wanted to make.
Sure, and that's excellent questions that you have. So part of, if we're going into an automated system, would require that the carts be provided to the residents. And again, there's different options and sizes. So that would be part of the program that the vendor would have to say, this is how we're going to move forward with getting everybody with a standard cart that can be used. Because the Rubbermaid or their smaller bins, if those are put out and the hydraulic gets it, it basically destroys that cart. So the other ones have a harder plastic that they're used. So that would definitely be provided to the residents as part of their contract. And recycling, absolutely, again, they should not be just mixing the recycling with the garbage. So it would be a different truck. Normally, if it's automated, again, the carts would be a different color. So that one truck would go in for garbage, and a different truck would be used for recycling, and just making sure that they're actually doing it correctly. This next person on the Zoom list that I have here is Gage, and I'm asking him to unmute.
Hi, good afternoon or good morning. It's Gage, 114th Street. Thank you, Mario, for this meeting. Manager Diaz, I'm sorry. I do agree that I think we should maybe have another one. This meeting came up within a week, and such an important thing that maybe you might want to just do the same presentation again on a weeknight or something, and give a little more notice to the residents so they can attend. Our current system is not sustainable. It's not going to be something that we can continue on. I think the park needs to realize that and take that into account. But also, Manager Diaz, we have to keep in mind that we are a very special place, a special park. So cookie cutter packages might not work specifically for us. It does look like, we are going to have to move to a swing arm truck type pickup. Question was, now we do garbage twice a week, but with the larger containers, do we need to do garbage twice a week? Can it be just once a week? Regarding the recycling, I mean, we were told flat out by the Waste Pro guy during a meeting this past year that pretty much everything goes to the same place and they dump it in the same pile, and then they just kind of, there's no market for recycling. So my question is do we actually have by law to have a recycling? Can that just be done away with? I mean, if it's just going nowhere, then why do we need to have it? I also agree with the one-time maintain yard waste pickup. And if it has to be going into containers, could it be then can switch to 2 times a week for the waste pickup? It just, if we're having to shove everything into these garbage cans. You mentioned the new garbage cans. Is there an upfront cost to the village that we're gonna have to pay for all these, like we did for the recycling bins, which we now have, and we spend a lot of money on? Are the recycling bins going to be able to be reused, or do they get thrown away? I mean, we spend a lot of money on those recycling bins. Concerns, if we don't have weekly pickups, which is Monday, Tuesday, Friday right now, it's going to become confusing. Do I put my cans out this week, or do I put it out the next week, or whatever? And then, we run the risk of starting to have visual blight, where there's garbage cans sitting out. There's large piles of trash or yard waste sitting out that's actually not being picked up until the next week. So these things, we have to keep in mind a system that everyone is going to be able to work with, and also keep in mind. Long-term contracts, I'm really concerned about that, especially if it turns out the thing doesn't work. I believe the franchise fee now we use as in our budget. So if we lose the franchise fee, how are we going to make up that hole in our budget? And I'll close off with answering to the Commissioner Kennedy. I personally would be willing to pay more for the premium service that we have now. Because I haven't seen any proposals except for what was proposed, what was just shown. I can't really state, but I would imagine, up to another $100 a year, I could see myself paying just to maintain a good service that we spend a lot of money to live in this park. And for us to have to haul our trash to a central location, that's not feasible. And I believe that was all my comments. So thank you very much for this workshop.
Thank you, Gage. I appreciate it. And just I'll answer a couple things. The carts would essentially be negotiated as part of the bid, and there's different ways for that to be paid for. So that could be one idea, and this is just off the top of my head, could essentially be the franchise fee that's normally done. That first year can be in lieu of those new carts that might be needed, right? So overall, it's still a net zero budget. But there's a lot of different ways to do that, and that's something that you would end up negotiating once you have the contractor that you're going to move forward with. The recycling carts, I would anticipate that they stay at the 65, because there are really Biscayne Park recycling carts, and they go up to 65. So those are actually pretty good, and they can maintain. So we don't need to change that. What would change in an automated system would essentially be those small bins, the kitchen bins that you use for recycling. Those can't be picked up with the trucks anymore. So those would kind of go away, and we'd go to those 65. And we do have several at the Public Works Yard. So if you're interested and you don't have one and you want to go to the cart, please reach out to us next week, and we'll make sure that we get that out to you. There was a couple other things that you had mentioned. Within the contract, if you have the bigger carts, can you go down to one-time garbage pickup? You can. But I think right now, those are all things that administratively within the contract, you can kind of move forward through once you start seeing, you know what, now that we have the bigger carts and people aren't really using them twice a week, and we have another discussion for that at a later time, then you can say, okay, now that we're seeing that there is justification to go down to one. Yeah, it looks like a good idea. Let's try it out. And maybe we try it for a month. And if it doesn't work, we keep our two-time pickup. And if it did, then great. But being more consistent and having that availability in, I think we need to at least get there first before we go into that level of discussion. But
it's not for the
with these
RFP.
contracts, with any municipal contract, there's no guarantee of work or type of work within it. So although they're contracted for the service, the villages could always pull that that work from the contract for whatever reason. So those are some of those little key instances that we have available to us. It's not necessarily this is all we're ever going to get and we can't move from it. So we can always continue to evolve the level of service once we have that contract under play. So thank you so much, Gage, for your comments. The next person I have on here on my participation list with a hand raised is Janie Anderson, and I am asking to unmute her.
Great. Thank you so much, Mario. Beautiful job on the presentation, as well as the amount of communication that came out this week. That is far and above what we've seen in the past. My concerns, and yes, to answer one of Mac's points, I am more than willing to pay what it takes for a top tier service. We are now a community where people are comfortable listing their homes at over $1 million. We've got to pay attention to visual blight, which currently is a significant problem. One of the things that would go a long way to helping, back when Waste Pro first took us over, we did garbage and yard waste one day on a Monday, recycling and garbage one day on a Friday. Now you've got trucks only in here 2 days a week. Now you've got cans out here far fewer days a week. It also makes it easier for the code officer to discern whether or not that item is out on the wrong day. And it just, let's face it, we have properties now that the cans never leave the front yard. And that's just beyond tacky, and it shouldn't be in a city, again, where homes are now being listed at over 1 million. We've got to tighten it up, and a way to tighten it up is to get back to the 2 days a week, not 3, 4, and 5 like we've had now. The other thing, the 2 cubic yards a week of yard waste is absolutely crucial. That should be a deal breaker if anybody doesn't want that. You see the foliage we have. Those of us with Areca palms, it's a full-time job. So that's got to be. The other thing is, we used to get quarterly an extra Saturday pickup. My observation, and others may feel very differently, but my observation is it's barely used anymore. Whereas you do have people, maybe not talking to commissioners, but they'll post on Nextdoor every now and again saying, once in a while on a regular pickup day, they would like that extra ability. So you have a 4 cubic yard. The vendor would have to decide what day, because the vendor would have to staff for it. But I think a lot of people would be grateful even for once every 6 months to have the regular day have a little additional. And I too, yeah, that's interesting about the franchise fee. If we lose that, where do we make that up? And last but not least, one more workshop in the evening. I mean, it's a great participation today, but you're asking folks for a lot of feedback, and you really want the most diverse group possible giving it to you. So I hope there'll be at least one more. And again, thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Anderson. Okay, next on my list from Zoom is a Randy Anglin, and I'm asking him to unmute now.
Hello all, happy Saturday. Mario, well done. Great job on the presentation. My question is, or issue is consistency of service. I know that we're in a COVID era, right? So things, I'm sure they've had labor issues and, you know, just things around consistency of service because people maybe not available because of illness, et cetera, et cetera. Prior to that, I still had, my experience was around my trash wouldn't get picked up, let's just say. And there's no place for me to call, maybe perhaps call the city, et cetera, et cetera. And is there a possibility of creating maybe a hotline or a number or some way that we can email or get in contact with the service provider and not the city if our trash doesn't get picked up? Additionally, in terms of the hours, I know we can never hold them to hours because there's various things happen during the route. But is there a set time approximately when they come? Is it before 6, after 7, a.m. that is? Is it after 10? I mean, just somewhere in between, so we can have a general idea around that. But mainly my issue is the consistency of service in terms of days that they come to pick up and the level of how they leave the trash cans too. I don't want to get too picky, but still, you see things in the middle of the road. That's not that hard to say, hey, just put it in the grass where it was. That's not that difficult of a thing to do. So that's my input. Thank you.
Thank you, Randy. So that's an excellent question with regards to the hotline or something like that. Right now, the current vendor uses something called Track EZ. And I don't know if it's meant to be a pun of making it easy to track. I don't find it easy in any way. And I'm sure you all have your own opinions on that. But the some new procurements out there that I've seen other municipalities is calling that's a type of contract manager needs to be in place. So there's different ways to kind of verbalize that as a way that the contractor gives back to the municipality. Normally it's for them, it's not a big issue because they make up for it in other aspects in their rates for commercial. And so there's a lot more leeway, and their contracts are multi-million-dollar contracts. So yeah, they don't mind hiring somebody for the city to manage those complaints, but it's something we can definitely try to incorporate and to take a look at. With regards to the bins being in the middle of the street and all, it's a level of service that we continually have communications with the contractor to try to improve. I think one of the reasons why an automated system for the garbage collection is interesting is because that's where a lot of those starts being reduced, because that arm picks it up, puts it in, and basically puts it back where it found it. So it just becomes more regular. So very interesting comments. Thank you so much, Randy. Next person that I see on my here is Mr. Gary Q. Asking him to unmute right now. There we go.
I think we got it. We need a tutorial on raise your hand. We can never find it. Anyway, a couple of things just for clarification. You mentioned that people are doing some DIY work that they may have extra construction debris out there. That's a violation. Construction debris is not supposed to be put out with a trash pickup. And the other thing was mentioning the claw for oversized loads, and oversized loads are a violation. In fact, people that are having a service come in to do tree trimming, or tree removal, that's supposed to be removed by the service. And I don't think any of those things are being enforced. One consideration for side yard pickup, aside from those people that may have health or physical disabilities, would be, to pay extra for it. I think that's a huge variable in terms of a proposal. Somebody doesn't know how many people would want that, and I could see that being something that drives the cost up. I would love to see some consideration, maybe it be a once a year hazardous material pickup and an electronics pickup. It's a real disposal problem. I'm sure many people simply bury the stuff in their trash and nobody notices. I would emphasize emphatically that Barbara and I are willing to pay more to maintain the level of service we have, and maybe some tweaks like hazardous material pickup, electronic pickup. But I mean, if it was a 50% increase, it wouldn't bother us. As far as the garbage,
50% increase. Fucking
that,
nuts.
that needs to be picked up twice a week. I mean, particularly in the summer, you don't want it sitting out there for a week. It's a health hazard. I don't even know if you're allowed to do that. As far as yard waste, a consideration might be to go to containers, which would limit the quantities and ease the pickup. And you wouldn't have this never-ending debris laying around in people's yards that don't use the containers or bags, simply pile up leaves, in a pile on the side of the yard, which is ridiculous. I think that's it. Maybe Barbara would like to say a few things. Is that okay?
Sure.
Okay, I'm just going to add a few things. When you were talking about the process we have now, and you mentioned that we have manual pickup for yard trash, but if it's over 2 cubic yards, then they would send in the cloth truck. I don't know why, and I've seen that, but I don't know why they're doing it, because just like Gary said, we're limited at 2 cubic yards. And I think when people take advantage of the size, it means much more work for the company, and it's a gray area whether that anybody's paying extra. And that's going to run up the price every time we have to negotiate a contract. Hold people accountable for 2 cubic yards. As far as, I don't like to bring up house prices. I'm in my house. We want to enjoy the life here. And I'm not worried about what it's going to be when I want to sell my house. But our home prices in the park are going up. And this isn't an area where people are looking for bargain prices. I want the same service that I've been getting for 40 years. When we lived here, we moved in the 70s, and I'm almost positive that we were paying over $500 for the garbage service. This is back in the 80s. We're paying less now. How many people are having services that they're paying the same price or less that they paid for 40 years ago? Everybody expects to pay more. And we have much more vegetation, other situations that other communities don't have. So you really can't compare one community to ours and say, well, they only pay a certain price. And on Nextdoor at commission meetings, I've never heard people say, when are you going to lower my trash fee? So I think you have to realize if people were upset about the price they're paying, they'd be talking about the price. And I don't hear that. To me, it's the level of service that people want. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Next on my list is Dr. Debbie Holmes, and I'm asking her to unmute now.
Yes, hi, good morning.
Good morning.
Thanks for the presentation. My husband and I just had a couple of comments. First of all, if we choose to go with the automated truck, we have concern about many of the low-lying power lines. And we have quite a few of them on Northeast 8th Avenue, and there have been some instances where trucks came down and knocked out the cable, knocked out the TV. So that's one concern with the claw. And we wanted to request consideration of maybe changing the recycle to Mondays when many people clean, et cetera, over the weekend, instead of having recycles sitting around all week. And the last thing was, we would be willing also to go up in the price a little bit. We do understand that many people are struggling now with the COVID pandemic, but if we're going to get the services, and also it would be great to know, I agree with some of the comments, when they're coming, because sometimes it's just so unpredictable. And, we understand when there's inclement weather and things change, but anyhow, we appreciate the information. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Holmes. And I do want to, and I apologize to Randy as well, I did not answer. Per the contract, the vendors allowed to start pickup at 7 in the morning and go through 5 p.m. So they have a window to do that. You would obviously want to kind of narrow that down so it's more consistent, but they essentially have an entire day to pick that up according to their contract right now. I do see them early in the morning as I drive in. I usually get into the office between 7:30 and 8 o'clock in the morning. So I do see them already working in throughout the area. So it just kind of depends on how fast they're moving throughout the community. Next on the list, I have a Miss Barbara Watts, and I'm
hi.
here. Here you go.
Okay, hi. Uh-oh, now I've lost myself.
You're coming out loud and clear. Oh, no, now you are muted. Okay.
Think I do this for.
There we go.
Right. Okay. Thanks for all the information. I just have a few points that I'd like to make. Some in agreement with Gary and Barbara, some disagreement. And all. One, I'd really like us to take, look carefully at the size of the trucks and where the arm's going to go, just as Dr. Holmes mentioned about, electrical lines, but I'm concerned about the foliage and the canopy. And I don't really necessarily want our canopy to go that much higher because we have to have trucks going through. And some years ago, way before I was ever on the commission, we bought a truck from Bell Harbor or someplace, and we got it in here and it was just too large for the streets and we had to return it. So that's something I'd like to think of you to keep in mind. Also, about the size of the garbage bins. I know that some of them, I was looking at them, they're like some of them are over 4 feet high. And, when seen from a small gate in the back, I'd like to make sure that they're not visible from the front of the house. And the taller you get, the more visibility you're going to have of garbage cans. I do think that if we have recycling and we're paying for recycling, we should have a guarantee that the recycling is actually being recycled. And I think this is very important for the identity of Biscayne Park. If we're a green community, we shouldn't be just throwing things into the trash or throwing things into a recycle that in fact is going into the garbage. Like right until I broke my foot, in December, I was taking all my light cardboard and paper to Publix to put into their bins, just as I do the plastics that aren't taken by Biscayne Park. And I think that it's just a fraud, and I really think if we do pay more money, we should pay to find a source, find a company that actually recycles. Then the yard work, putting all your yard trash into containers. I think that's very difficult, like with big palm fronds, and it would double the work, I think, for many people. I mean, yes, I think that small items, leaves, all of that stuff should be bagged, but the really big things, I mean, this is a tremendous amount of work, especially for someone who doesn't have a yard person. And it will cause people to have yard people, and that's very expensive. Then finally, I think the trucks, trees, size of the bins. Okay, side yard pickup. Since I've fractured my foot like 2 or 3 times in the last 3 years, I really do appreciate it. And I think that it would be nice for the community to be able to say, for the people who are temporarily disabled, that a service can be provided, even if you pay more. But it's sometimes I just don't want to ask my neighbors to do it for me. And pulling a garbage can when you're on a rollator with your knee up in the air is very difficult. Then finally the money thing. Before we privatized, we were paying about $350 more. This is like 6 or 7 years ago when we did this. Okay, and so we were paying at least $350 if memory serves me. I know that the change in ticket cost or whatever will upset some people who are new to the village because they already pay so much in taxes. But as Barbara said, this is essentially what we were paying. Was much more, and we had better service. I think that's everything I can think of. Okay, that's all. Thank you very much, and thanks for putting this together.
No problem. Thank you so much. Next on my list is Mr. Dan Keys, and I'm asking to unmute him.
Okay, well, thank you for this presentation. I think that I'm just going to go through some random thoughts. I think your thoughts about backyard not being universally provided is okay with me. A medical situation should be provided for in the contract. One way to do that would be to provide a certain number of those as a guesstimate in the RFP. and have a per item increase over that number. If you had 50 people in the community that needed it, you write that into the contract as something that's provided, and anything over that, there would be an additional charge to the village. Yes, we need high-end service, Commissioner Kennedy. I don't think that it's necessary to actually pay more, because most of the services that we're talking about, service changes we're talking about, are actually going to be easier for the contractor to perform, and therefore their costs are going to go down. So we shouldn't be seeing an increase for that. I like what Janie Anderson said about the quarterly pickup. I don't think that it was particularly valuable, and I think there is quite a bit of merit to switching whatever cost there was to that to 1 or 2 pickups that do exceed the 2 cubic yards by crane, such that you can put a little bit, you do some cleanup in your yard personally. It doesn't necessarily have to be a tree trimming company that's doing this work. I do my own work, and I can easily put 4 yards of stuff out there if I put my mind to it. So, switching that quarterly to that situation, I think has merit to look into. We had one point talked about going to Miami-Dade County, and there was an issue with that, in that we currently wrap an administrative fee into our waste fee, and it's a good size amount, and I don't know how we would recoup it under that circumstance. But going to the basics, the commingled container that you're talking about, the automated refuse, one-armed bandit, if you will, collection. My understanding is that we'd be able to put garbage, yard waste, household waste into that container twice a week and have it collected. So any small leaves, anything, basically, we can put into that container and have it collected twice a week. If you happen to have a yard that behaves and doesn't have a lot of leaves and branches and so forth, you might be able to fit it all in that 2 cubic yard, and that's great. You don't put anything on the ground. The next question is, what do you do with those things that either are going to take you 4 hours to cut up and get into the container, or would exceed those 2 containers a week, which equates to 1 cubic yard of material. We currently are allowed 3 cubic yards of material between garbage and yard waste. So the question is, how do we pick up the stuff that gets put on the ground, and do we permit that? I say that each of us would have the option to have a crane come to our property whenever we put material on the ground, and we do that at our own choice. Know that we're inviting a big machine that is not very delicate to our property, and it may do some damage to our driveway or our small piece of parkway. It will. Cranes are going to cause damage, and if we don't want to have that damage at our properties, we have the ability not to put material on the ground in front of our houses. Going to recycling. I personally, we need to make sure that there is no place for any vendor that we hire to take recycling and have it recycled. Then we have to make sure that people recycle properly, so that loads do not become contaminated to the extent that the company can't take it to the recycler because it has a pizza box or a pizza in it, and that can't be recycled. So, but I'm personally okay with not having recycling. I'm personally okay with using those containers that we have now for yard waste and garbage, such that we reduce even more material laying on the parkway on a weekly basis. I think there's plenty of recycling being done. The state limits are being met by large recycling large businesses and large facilities that do recycle, and I'm okay with getting rid of it.
Thank you so much.
Can I just go to, personally, this may become an issue in the future. I'm okay with Waste Pro as a vendor. as long as we can have some insurances and have something written in the contract to make sure that they do what we ask them to do. The details in an RFP are very important. Okay.
All right, thank you so much. And
Okay.
if something else comes to mind, once we go through some of the other residents, we can definitely come back. I'm here for the rest of the day if we need be. Next on my list is Jared Suzy, and I'm asking to unmute them. And I apologize if I mispronounced your name. You're still muted. It could be the device itself. If you're on a handheld device, if you go to the left, there might be a button in the middle of the screen for tap to speak. Still not coming through. Okay, so why don't we, as they try to figure that out, let's go to someone else and I'll come back to you, Jared. Next on the list is Claudia. I'm asking to unmute her right now.
Yeah, thank you for the presentation. It was pretty good and pretty clear. There's one thing I want to mention, as Ms. Barbara Watts says, I think we have to make sure that if we are paying for recycling, that is actually being done. I mean, to be honest with you, I didn't even know that they were actually throwing the recycling into the garbage. You know, it's really ridiculous, you know, so I think we don't mind to pay a little bit more, but we have to make sure that this stuff are done. I mean, I'm very conscious about the environment, and it's not just for paying, but we have to make sure that the environment actually, you know, that we are helping. So I don't know what we need to do, but we have to make sure that this is actually done. And also maybe we may need to put a list that helps people to understand what we can put on the recycling, because stuff change constantly. You know, before we can put plastic bags, now we cannot put the plastic bags. Before we can do this and that. So maybe we can do a new list, because actually there are many like new people usually here in Miami. So people, you know, from other countries or from other cities comes. So actually that probably would be a great idea. And I will actually would like to go to the meeting. So when is the meeting gonna be? I'm sorry to ask.
So the commission meeting is on Tuesday, and you can attend virtually on Zoom, just like we're doing here.
Oh, great.
So it's on the website calendar. So if you go to the website on the top left, you'll see a little item called calendar. And once you click on there and you just go to next Tuesday, and you'll see the link and everything that you need for the meeting.
Oh, okay. I really appreciate. Okay, thank you.
No problem. Thank you so much. Next on the list that I have is Mr. David Raymond, and I'm going to ask to unmute him. There we go.
Hey, good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
So thank you for doing this, Mario. Thank you for the research and putting this together and sorting through what happened with the last RFP. And so not to belabor anything that anyone said, but I think the recycling, you know, when we heard from Waste Pro that the recycling was all getting dumped into the same place, the good news is that for years we've been having this debate in our household as to what goes into the recycling and when it gets rinsed and how to do all these things so nicely. And then we find out it all gets dumped in the same place. So if in fact whoever we contract with is going to dump it in the same place, it seems ridiculous that we're paying for recycling. I know that people feel good about it and you want to feel good about it, but if it's all being sorted out down the line, which is what we've heard from the people at Waste Pro, and when I worked at the county, that's what I heard from the people at the county in terms of their waste facility. Some of it is reclaimed, some of it isn't. So I think that's more of our own wanting to feel good about, you know, helping the world than what's actually going on in reality. I think it would be important to know from whoever we hire what that reality is. In terms of the pricing and the cost, when Mac was asking questions and others asked questions about the price, I I think what we're paying now is reasonable. I think paying more is probably likely going to happen, and I think it's probably reasonable as well. I don't think it makes sense to try to take this in-house given the cost and also what we've seen around the pandemic. If we wind up, Waste Pro, I know, lost staff members during this. If we have something like this again and you've got, half your staff out sick, God forbid, what's going to happen then? And it's just us. We don't have a big workforce to rely on. So I don't think that makes a lot of sense. And finally, Mario, I guess the question to you in terms of, not to put you on the spot, but I'll put you on the spot anyway. Do you, in terms of this RFP, I know there were issues with the last one. Is there any assistance that you need from someone to do this, or do you have, the availability of consulting with someone for an RFP or piggybacking off of another RFP to be able to accomplish that?
So thank you so much for the question and your comments, Mr. Raymond. With regards to piggybacking, and for those who don't know what piggybacking means, is essentially you're using another municipality's contract and their process and are just entering into a contract with the vendor that they've already selected. Because these services are so unique to that community, I would not recommend piggybacking on somebody else's contract. When I had the conversation with various industry companies, their biggest concern was, well, we normally underbid residential services because we got a lot more on commercial in a lot of other municipalities. So they were even hesitant to be willing to allow us to piggyback on another contract. Even though we're using the process from the other city, the vendor has to agree to do it. So with regards to putting it together, I've already been looking at various templates, from the one that was previously used here to one that Key Biscayne recently used. Sweetwater recently did one as well. North Miami Beach also did. So I'm doing an internal analysis and now taking a lot of your comments in as to what you want to see within the community, and then I can be able to kind of shape that together. There are a couple individuals that I can kind of reach out to take another look to make sure it all makes sense, and I will do that individually. But we do have that that assistance available to us, and not for a cost. So that makes it, I know there are companies that would do that for a cost. I don't think we need to do that. That's I think we have enough with the experience I have in writing procurements, and even starting to write for sanitation, and the colleagues that I have in the industry. I think that we will be covered. But that's a great question. I'm going to try to go back to Mr. Jared Susie. I'm sorry if I'm mispronouncing it. I don't know why I get tongue-tied. So I'm going to ask to, all right, you're unmuted. No. If you swipe to the left, I don't know if you have a gallery of all the users in front of you. If you're on a mobile device, if you swipe to the as far left as you can, there might be a button that says tap to speak. And usually on a mobile device, you might need to kind of touch that to be able to talk. No. Okay. You have my email. I know you emailed me. Why don't you email me directly, and then once we all wrap up, I'll call you directly and we can talk, okay? I'm gonna go to a Mr. George Camacho, and I'm asking to unmute him now. Hi, thank you for joining.
Thank you for the kind presentation. I think there's a lot of information to digest. You did a fantastic job of presenting all the services that we are getting and so forth. You mentioned something very interesting, which is consistency of quality of services, consistent services. I think being a resident of the park for the past 30 years, and what I have seen is really lack of consistency in the past 2 or 3 years. So I think we need to remind ourselves that we are going through an RFP process. All right. The object of that is just to get the most for our buck. The notion that says that home prices are going up and therefore I'm going to be paying more for the service I'm getting. I think we're getting a little bit sidetracked. Let's focus on what's important. Let's get the best deal for what we're paying now. I'm okay with increasing it as long as the increase is actually going to be consistent for the rest of the contract. So I just disagree with the fact that we're quick at jumping at the idea that we're going to be paying more, or because there are houses that are valued over $1 million, we need to pay more. That is just not realistic. We're focusing on not on real estate. Let's focus on the services that we're getting for the amount of money that we're paying for. Now, I look forward to the commission meeting, but I think we're going to have more time to elaborate on all these. And I really look forward to perhaps get a little more participation in the RFP. Love to see, I hope those RFPs are going to be available to all the residents and be able to have a better idea on what we are getting. That's it.
Thank you so much, Mr. Camacho. I have next on my list, Dr. Martin Zayak, and I'm asking to unmute him.
Hi, everybody, and thank you, Mario, for taking the time. Nice presentation. It's very, very clear. There's not much question, I don't think, and thank you for also addressing the other issue we talked about the other day. I think that, you know, I moved in this neighborhood because I'm into landscaping, I'm into gardening, I'm into preserving our environment, conservation. We live in a very specialized niche. We don't even realize we're 5 minutes away from any of the big areas in the city, but yet we have our own garden community that is unique. It's a bird sanctuary, and I have hummingbirds coming to my house. I have painted buntings, which is my son's favorite bird to see, and they come into my, you know, feeders. So we're lucky. And those of you who know me, that see me working like a real tough worker on the weekends, I'm a weekend warrior. I live between 111th and 113th on 8th Court. You're welcome to come by and see what I've done to the front of my house. I think I like it. Most people that come by say they're amazed and they enjoy it as well. So we're lucky. As far as the garbage, the services that we have now are obviously not being performed to what we expect them. I'm happy to pay more. No one's saying that we're agreeing to pay more. We need to get the good service. If we get the good service, paying more is not an issue. But we need to preserve the unique area that we have, and the garbage, you know, twice a week, and the recycling once a week is easy. But, you know, more trucks, more people in the street just take away from the natural environment. So I used to live in another community, I won't say where, but it was fine. They had the automated service. They used to have the hand pickup, but then they switched to the automated service. There were low lines. They're careful. They realize if they knock a line down, they have to fix it. So I don't think that, at least in the areas I've driven around, there's anything that's so obstructive. It's certainly more efficient. And actually, they had a crane type device or an arm device with a big dump truck leading. They would go back and back, and the crane would come up and pick up the yard waste. And there was no worry whether it was 2 cubic yards or 3 cubic yards, because I've been cited a few times for having 3.2 cubic yards in my lawn. And I think that that's, you know, I don't have a measurement. I don't have a thing to calculate. I eyeball it. I try to cut everything in sizes that are equal, but I have no problem with the arm situation. I think it would be more efficient. It would, you know, alleviate the 2 to 3 cubic yard rule or whatever that rule is. And I love being here. I moved here because of the unique environment, and the more we can beautify it, everybody, the better it's going to be for all of us, regardless of the value of the house. I mean, we need to keep our lives green. We need to encourage, you know, bettering our environment. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Next in my list is Mr. Ben, and I'm asking to unmute him. There we go. Hello.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Well, thank you for the outstanding presentation. A lot of the preceding speakers raised a lot of the concerns that I was going to raise, which is there's been, and this across the US, not just unique to Biscayne Park, a lot of scandals about communities paying for recycling. and all of us doing our due diligence to recycle and separate, only to learn that the providers, it's just an idea that they're selling to us. And we feel good about it, and we think we're accomplishing something when in fact we're not. So I would echo what has been said before, which is to ensure that if our priority is that we are being environmentally friendly, that we consider not only recycling, but also the type of trucks that come into our community. Maybe we need to ask that they be electric trucks or hybrid trucks or something modern that doesn't pollute the environment. We preserve all of the beauty that we have in this beautiful village. And I also agree with the preceding statements regarding we should focus on the service that we want and we desire as a community. And whatever that is, when it comes to pricing, that is the purpose of the RFP, to ensure that we get the utmost services that we are all wanting at the fairest price. And I think that should really be the focus. And like one of the gentlemen said, it isn't so much about the cost of the real estate, what have you. I think the few of us who are here listening and speaking, I am willing to pay more to get better services, not just with garbage, but with anything that impacts my life and that of my family. I think we all agree on that. But we can't speak for everybody who's not present. Not everybody has the little luxury that maybe some of us enjoy of being able to pay a little bit more for better services. So we do have to be cognizant of that as well. But anyway, thank you very much.
Thank you, Ben. Appreciate your comments. I have two more with their hands raised. I'm going to go, I have Mr. Dan Keys and Scarlett Hammonds. I'm going to go with Scarlett since she hasn't spoken yet, Mr. Keys, and then I'll get to you. Scarlett, I'm asking to unmute. Good morning.
Hi, good morning, everybody. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi, I'm one of the newer residents here in Biscayne Park. I've been here for about a year, living on Griffin Boulevard, and I just wanted to say that I really love this community. It's an amazing place to live, and I really appreciate it. And I appreciate you having this opportunity for us all to give feedback on garbage. And I would just want to know if it's possible to add into the RFP to have the contractor provide a service that they could, we could elect to have feedback when they miss our garbage pickup, such as on holidays, and then they could just send us a text message to say, we know that, Christmas Day it was missed, but your next pickup is going to be, and give us a date so that we know when to put our garbage out. If that's possible, that they could provide that service, that would be great. And I'm good with paying more as well. I don't know, I wouldn't put an exact dollar amount on how much I'd be willing to pay, but I think that it is really important to have the best service that we possibly can have. I would really appreciate that. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you so much. Mr. Keys, I'm going to come back to you. Thank you for patiently waiting, and I'm asking to unmute.
Okay, real quick, I wonder if you investigated what the service level in North Miami is, and I know that they have a big commercial component that's affecting their rates, but in terms of describing the service there in North Miami, and I'll echo what Commissioner Samaria said about having, possibly having one more, open discussion type meeting like we're having here before the commission, directs you in what direction to go in. Where you can tell us what you're planning and we can chime in. Commission meetings are not the most convenient place to make comments on this, and especially because you don't have the ability to come back and forth on occasion. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Keys. When looking at North Miami and North Miami Beach, they recently went through an RFP service. Waste Pro won those contracts. My estimation of the documents that they put out I think they were looking for a lot of give back to the community. And so in those, you will see an extra scholarship being funded by the contractor, an extra 100-something thousand for a position, and the sponsorship of another program that they're going in. They are doing garbage pickup twice, similar to what we have. They do have recycling, and they do bulk and things similar, not too different than what we have. But I think the overall, you start looking at the bids that they got back, and the vendors interpreted that more on what are the vendors going to be giving to the city for other type of services. And so that's where I took a big pause on. And I know that right now they're still in negotiation with the awarded vendor, and they're supposed to start on the 1st, and that might not come to fruition. So there were a lot of issues with their RFP and the way, and I personally don't think it's a good fit for just using as a template for us here. I will come back to you, Mr. Keys, but I do have others that raise their hand. If you'd like to just have a one-on-one conversation, you can always email me as well, and we can do that, but I'll come back to you. Next on my list is a JCM adjuster, and I'm asking to unmute you right now.
Yep, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. Thank you for joining.
Okay, sure. James Murphy, I'm over here at 941 Northeast 115th Street. I'm right across from the Kitty Tot lot, and I've been here for many, many years. One of the things that, and all the ideas and all the recommendations are fantastic, and we're bringing up issues, but I haven't heard how we're going to address this new system, the new mechanized system with our seniors, especially those folks that are disadvantaged. How do we get the word out to them? How do we get them with that educational curve? And also folks that have already some difficulties and limitations, how are we going to be working with them? Because this is going to be a new system, and we need to take that into account, reaching out to them, making sure that they're aware of it. And, if there's some circumstances, there's special circumstances we need to provide, because some of them can get out to their side door, their back door, and get the garbage into the can, but they're not able to roll these cans out to the curbside. That's got to be taken into account because we don't want to forget them. We don't want them to be the forgotten residents, and that can happen real easy. And then with the increase, they're on fixed income, and we've got to take into account, for the folks that aren't, we may have to share some of that burden and give them some consideration because they're already going from day to day and check to check. We've got to take that into account and not forget about them, because you can't just throw a bill at them and then the next thing you know, they're outstanding on their taxes. And we don't want to be that community that takes these properties away from these folks because they can't afford to pay their taxes, and they've got a tax deed on their property and they lose their home, and this is their forever home, their retirement home, in a great community that they were the ones that paid the taxes way back when in the 50s, 60s, and 70s. And I just don't want us to kick them to the curb. And we've got some wonderful seniors in this community that have done a great job of building what we are now taking advantage of and seeing the property values go up because they created this oasis. And I want to make sure that we don't forget them and then just brush them off to the side. That's my biggest concern. And I love my seniors. I love my neighbors. They're amazing people, and they've done such a great job of protecting this community. I just want to make sure we don't forget about them. Thank you, guys.
Absolutely, Mr. Murphy. Thank you for your comments. And one of the ways that we address whether someone is temporarily disabled, permanently disabled, or just they can't physically take those carts out anymore because they're 90 some odd, and some of our neighbors who are in their 90s are probably in better shape than we are. But the program for having a side yard component where the driver of an automated truck, for example, would get down, go to the side of the home or to the back, and then bring it to the truck, do that, and then put it back. That is something that we've contemplated. Even if the vendors, let's magically, pretend that none of the vendors will do it. They're just adamant they will not do it. Then as a village manager, I would work out a program with our staff to make sure that our staff is able to do that for the residents. So one way or another, there would be some type of an exemption process that we can identify those residents who need it temporarily or permanently to be able to do that. But in large part, those are far and few between, as opposed to saying the entire community is in that type of same situation. So we're able to address that in a smaller scale than community-wide. So we would definitely be taking a look, and you bring up an interesting point with regards to fixed income, something that we'll definitely have to take into consideration and take a look to see what's available and what's best practice out there. I'm all for finding the best cases and the best process and bringing it in instead of trying to reinvent the wheel every single time. And as many have stated, we live in a very unique community. And what's amazing is we're surrounded by much larger communities and much larger municipalities that have gone through a lot of these issues already. So finding out what's been the best practice with them and how that's been addressed and seeing how that could fit for us is what part of the research that we'll definitely do. So thank you for bringing that up. We have a Jeff Strantz, and I'm asking to unmute.
Hello, how are you doing?
Hello, thank you for joining us today.
I just have a couple quick comments, and yes, a very nice presentation, informative. Anyone who has a royal palm knows the fronds will not fit into any container. So someone mentioned maybe, you know, being able to put yard waste in a container. I don't see how even cutting it up, it would be, if you have multiple royal palms, that would be a problem, like I do. So the other point is the way they drive around here. I'm on a corner, so they're constantly driving over the corner of my property. And not only them though, the post office and FedEx and UPS and Amazon and all the construction people that, you know, are along Heath Court. Anyway, but I also noticed with the Ultra Waste Pro that one of the vehicles was leaking a lot of oil. I don't know if anyone's seen a lot of the streets lately, but it's from the waste truck. So I don't know if that's been taken into account with the situation of, you know, what happens when the trucks are, you know, constantly rolling the street. That's all I have. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Strantz. Next on the list, I have Dale. I'm going to ask to unmute him. There we go. Hello, thank you for joining us.
Thank you for the presentation. 12025 Griffin Boulevard. For the most part, I don't mind paying a premium for services that we expect and deserve. With regards to yard debris, I do think we need, we put out our 2 cubic feet each and every week, if not more. And when we do have an overload, thank goodness we have a big yard and we put it in the back corner and it stays there till we can slowly put out the 2 cubic feet. So putting it into a trash receptacle just would not work. We have large palm branches and I would spend more time doing that. So other than that, thank you. And once again, wouldn't mind paying more for the services that we currently have or better. Thanks.
Thank you, sir. Next, before I get back to Mr. Keys, will be Jean Francois. Asking to unmute, and I apologize if I butchered your name.
Not a problem, not a problem. Good morning, everyone, and I'm happy to be here. And I just had a question that is not really related to the garbage thing, but it is kind of related. But I'm asking myself if the garbage issue is a priority over the wards that are not fixed. I don't know if you realize that 111 and 9th Avenue by the park, like there's like a bump that you have to go over them, and the 111 is really bad at certain parts. I don't know if you have anything in mind regarding those wards that are needed to be fixed before the garbage thing could come up.
Thank you. That's an excellent question. No, they're not necessarily related. although the garbage trucks do impact the road more than any other type of vehicle. But the village is looking, I'm working on trying to get a capital improvement program together that will address storm drain, tree trimming, roads, and a slew of other things that go through. But we'll make a note and see if there's anything in the meantime that we can do to address the area that you mentioned. Thank you so much for the comment. Mr. Keys, if you don't mind, Mr. Rafa has, I saw that they lowered their hand and they come back up, first time speaker. So I'm gonna ask that they speak first and then I'll come back to you. You're next no matter what, I promise. Mr. Rafa, welcome. Thank you for joining us.
Good morning, hope you can hear me. I really love the quality of the conversation and the quality of the presentation. Thank you so much for leading this. My only comment would be that possibly we were thinking about how we fund this by household, and perhaps it's more indexed by property value in a way that still recognizes that those of us have bigger properties may use the service more, have or people that are been here for 30 years may be at that point in their life that they can't be. So I just wanted to open up the idea that there may be some different ways of how we fund this, and also that we're very open to the surprise and delight that a new vendor might offer us. Perhaps apps that let us have more, ability to request pickups and pay for them, ad hoc. That we can report, with the app, and it contacts the vendor and the city if we see that oil that's being dropped. If they do damage or take out someone's corner. I've seen a lot of people from 8th Court on this call, and I appreciate it. We're representing. So that's all I really had to say. Thanks so much.
Thank you. That's an interesting idea, absolutely, as to how, allowing for innovation for a vendor to provide their concept for innovation of how to better communicate. So that's a very interesting idea, and something I'll definitely bring up to the industry forum to get a better sense of. So thank you for bringing that up. Mr. Keys, we're coming back, asking to unmute. Perfect, thank you. And I do want to say thank you for the comments. I know you have a wealth of experience in this from Coral Gables, and so your thought process and your comments have been very helpful. So I do appreciate it. Thank you.
You're welcome. And I apologize for the redundant question here, or repeated question. With regard to North Miami, what I was speaking about is the description of the type of service that they provide, because it appears that they have one-armed bandit containers, and that they also have some sort of crane yard trash collection. And there might be some language there that an RFP could use, and or residents could drive around North Miami and see if they like what they're seeing in the community.
Okay, I will definitely follow up on that. And Miss Claudia would like to say something again. Miss Claudia, I'm asking you to unmute.
I just want to mention one thing about, like everybody is saying, okay, we are willing to pay more and all this or that. I just have one concern, and is that paying more doesn't mean that we're going to have a better service. What we have to make sure is that we're going to have a service that we are paying for. If we say, okay, this is what we need, and we're willing to pay that amount, we have to make sure that they provide it to us. That's, basically my concern. It doesn't mean that because the houses here in Biscayne Park are $1 million or whatever, it doesn't mean that we have to pay $900 a year. Yeah, if we're not gonna give us the service that we're asking for, why to pay more? If we're gonna dump everything in the same garbage trash, why to pay more? So
Absolutely.
That's my only comment. Okay.
Understood.
So
absolutely. Thank you, Ms. Claudia. Okay, I don't have any more hands up, and I'm looking through the gallery to see if anyone has their hand physically up, and I'm not seeing any. So again, thank you all so much for joining us. My email is villagemanager@biscayneparkfl.gov. Please feel free to send me any comments, any questions, anything additional. that you may have, more than willing to take a look at that and be able to share that. Again, this meeting was being recorded, so I will try to get this up as soon as possible, in case you want to just listen through all the comments, see the presentation again, and I will make, if it's not already up, I thought I put a timer on it, but if it's not already up today, the PowerPoint will be on the website as well, so you can kind of take a look at that. Again, thank you all so much for joining us this morning. It is 12:07, and we will call it a day for now, and to continue having this discussion a little bit later down the road. Enjoy the rest of your weekend. Thank you, everybody. Have a wonderful day. Bye-bye.
Bye.